and welcome back to the Cinefile, the podcast celebrating cinema one film at a time. Each week, my co-host Jake Biller and I break down a film, discussing anything from mise-en-scène to scenes you missed. Today, we talk about the humor that can be found in horror. In 1974's Young Frankenstein. This is our last of our spooky Cinephile series. Jake, this was your pick this week. What are your opening thoughts? I had seen this once before, so it was a pleasant rewatch, but what are your opening thoughts?
Opening thoughts, I love this movie. I know this kind of is quite a left turn from the previous three movies in our Spooky Cinephile series, but I wanted to put this on here because this is a movie I watch every Halloween, because what better time to watch Young Frankenstein than around Halloween, because it's this movie is so funny. It literally cracks me up every time. I rewatched it and I still laugh at all the jokes. Mel Brooks, I think, is just a comedy genius, and
he's a unit for sure.
Gene Wilder in this, I think, is really good. Seeing him do a comedic role, which, I mean, he's done comedic roles, but he plays it straight in this for the most part, and that's what makes it funny. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then having MartyFeldman as Igor or Igor, however you want to say it, just like that man, just like he's just so funny.
It was a great performance.
Yeah, he is the joke to Gene Wilder's playing it straight. He is the antithesis of that. So I enjoyed that kind of pairing. Peter Boyle's in this as the monster Terri Garr.
I'm sorry. You mean Ray Romano's dad?
Yes.
Everybody Loves Raymond.
I could just hear
that is his full name. That is his full name. No, not Peter Boyle. Ray Romano's dad in Everybody Loves Raymond. It was a really, really long birth certificate.
Yes.
It was one of those things where I was like, is that him?
Yeah.
Because they say he's 7 foot.
Yeah.
Like, bro is 6'2". Like, yeah. I mean, now if Gene Wilder was like Tom Cruise, who's like 5'5",
yeah,
then it'd be more believable. But I mean, they still make him look like this hulking mass. So I mean,
sure.
it works. It works 100%. But that's why for a second it's like, is that Ray Romano's dad? Sure enough. And I had to do it in the high pitched voice as well to really make sure that I was correct.
Is it really?
I don't know. Yeah,
but Mickey.
Gosh. That's my Mickey Mouse impression, and you knew I was going to do that when you said Mickey.
Yes.
So we don't even need to go there. This was the second time I watched it. I watched this the first time when I was living at UV. So really? When I was with Tanner, with Tanner and Chance. I don't know if Tanner and Chance watched it with me. Now, when I say Chance watches a movie with me, this is our friend Chance. Chance doesn't watch a movie; he's on his laptop, but he will do his classic, like he's almost like Frankenstein's monster. Like he's like, or he does the, that's a Chanceism. But so he's like on his laptop, and then when something funny, or I laugh and I look at him, and then he goes. And he's like back to typing on his computer
because he's always on tech support for somebody.
He really is. That he does. There are no days off.
No.
Chance McKibben. There really isn't. So this was the second time I had seen it, and I liked it. It's not that I didn't like it. I think I wanted it to be funnier.
Okay.
So this is a satire.
Yeah.
And a satire is different than a spoof. And it's different than a plain old comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I went into it, I was expecting just a plain old comedy. If Gene Wilder hadn't played it so straight, it might have been more of a comedy. I mean, there are really, really great elements as we kind of get into talking about this. I mean, what Mel Brooks is really good at is like not wasting a joke.
Right.
So, what was Cloris Leachman's character?
Frau Blucher.
Yeah, Frau Blucher every time in the whole movie, and I was so like, I didn't have anything to do with this movie, but I was like almost proud of Mel Brooks for every time doing the horse neighing sound. Like even halfway through the movie, when they come back and they're like, Frau Booker, and then it's like the
Yeah,
horses
it's like
neigh.
I love that they bring it back in.
That to me, like you never waste a joke. So many
Right.
people think I'm really annoying when it comes to telling jokes, but I never waste the joke. I I mean I tell certain jokes all the time, so much so that my friends know what joke I was going to tell, and sometimes I don't tell it on purpose because then I'll see a smile and be like, they already knew what I was going to say. And this is the same kind of thing with Mel Brooks. I mean, this movie came out. This is pre Spaceballs, which, in my opinion, is probably his best film. Like from a comedic
Yeah.
point of view, I think it is. And now, granted, I'm a massive Star Wars fan,
Right.
but and I also haven't seen his one on Hitchcock. I need to see that one because
Yeah.
I think I'd like that one a lot too. But this one, I mean, I'm actually glad we watched Dracula before this because you can kind of see some of where he's pulling some of his inspiration from.
Right. Yeah. This is like heavily influenced from the original Frankenstein, which is 1933, I think, plus or minus a year.
Yeah,
But so very much in the vein of Dracula, same kind of style and same, same studio, same time period when they were making when they made Frankenstein as what they made Dracula. So everything we talked about when it came to Universal horror movies and like way back in the day, that reigns true with the original Frankenstein. And so this is a spoof off that. And speaking of the original Frankenstein, I read a story that I just found fascinating about the making of this movie. So in the early days of film, not everyone always got credit for things, especially people more behind the camera. I mean,
sure.
also in front of the camera, there are a lot of people that have uncredited roles. I mean, uncredited roles still happen today, but I think it's much more thorough. Credits are much more thorough nowadays.
Yeah, you don't
than they
see
were.
like first unit director or
Mhm.
first unit camera op. Like
Yeah,
yeah, you don't see those. You just see director of film,
yeah,
camera operator, that
yeah.
cinematographer. Yeah.
Knowing that, put a pin in that for a second. When Mel Brooks was making this movie, he went through and was trying to find like studying the original Frankenstein and like studying the props, especially when it came to the laboratory, all that big electrical equipment and all the set design there and the props. And he found out that the guy who designed it, Ken Strickfaden, was still
Yes.
alive.
Okay.
Dude was in like his 70s, but he was still alive. And so he called him up, and dude had all this stuff in his garage still. So Mel Brooks rented it from
His
him.
wife,
So
his wife must have been pissed.
so
Get the
pissed.
stuff from 40 years ago out of the garage.
Ken, you didn't
Like,
even get a screen credit. Like, why?
yeah,
Why is this in the garage?
it doesn't work. It's a prop.
Yes.
Now granted, if my garage was full of props from amazing films, I probably wouldn't have a wife, but I still like it, she'd lose the argument. I'd be like,
Yes.
I'll tell you what, if you can memorize my thesis from college,
Oh my god.
then then you're able to remove it and we can put
Why?
it in a storage unit. We're not throwing it away.
Why am I going to come over to your house someday and your thesis is going to be framed next to your wedding certificate?
Oh, I was thinking about actually hiring somebody that does script, like hand script, and find a really big wall and just have it written out all 100 pages.
That's not
No,
vain at all.
no. Yeah, it's almost like you think this song is about you. You're so vain.
Thanks. Carly Simon? Yeah, Carly
Carly
Simon.
Simon. Yes. So
That song.
anyway, enough
Anyways, back
about
to this.
the garage.
Yes. So this guy, Ken Strickfaden, had all this equipment still in his garage, all these set pieces. And so Mel Brooks was like, "Can I rent it?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So he rented it. So when you see the laboratory scenes and like, the big dials and they flip the switches and everything when they're bringing the monster back to life, a lot of that is the original stuff from Frankenstein. And in a full circle moment, Ken Strickfaden got his screen credit that he was denied for the original Frankenstein.
See, that's cool. See,
Yeah.
I appreciate that dedication and like purpose.
Yeah.
Right. There's a purpose behind what Mel Brooks did.
Right.
And yeah, I appreciate that for sure.
And I feel like, you know, to your point, saying this is satire and not a spoof, because like it's I feel like it has respect for the source material. You know what I mean? It's not like making fun of it, but it's having respect, but also turning it into a joke.
Right. And that's important because I think a lot of times we just clump humor together. We're like, oh, it's a comedy, but there's so many different kinds of comedies. There are dark comedies, which I'm not a huge fan of. Like Dr. West made us watch Harold and Maude. Like what, 1970? It was around this time, 1974 or something like that. I hate that movie so much. I hate it so much. Now,
next
like
week
Wendy and
Cinefile.
Lucy, yeah, hell no. Like Wendy and Lucy is the movie that I hated so much that I complained to my professor. I was like, the audacity that you have to just play this movie in front of me. I also don't like Pan's Labyrinth. I've seen that 7 times because that's like a pinnacle of any film program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a few movies, and then Harold and Maude is probably number 3. No, it's 2 because I can appreciate Pan's Labyrinth. Harold and Maude is just disgusting. But there are different types of comedies, and so this has the reverence, and I think that's what Mel Brooks does well, is acknowledging and putting purpose, like I said before, in what he is doing, and that kind of allows for it to be played a little straighter. If you'd never seen a horror film of that era, you watch this movie and then watch another one, you can see that there, like, some of the elements are still kind of there. So basically what I'm trying to say is the reason why this movie to me is a little frustrating is because watching it, I saw so many more opportunities for jokes and like bits, and they just weren't there. It was played a little bit more straight, and that's the satire coming out as opposed to a spoof. Like, and then I'll shut up about this, but
it's okay.
Especially in the early 2000s, there were a lot of spoof movies. So, and they were like straight to DVD, straight to streaming, spoof movies.
Straight to streaming in the early 2000s?
Shut up.
The only thing that went straight to streaming is garbage that you threw in the stream. That was a bad joke. But
that was really bad. I didn't even want to say, like, because that's something I would say.
I can admit when I make a bad joke.
That's something I would say. And I was sitting there, I was like, oh, I hope he knows that was like, that was like what I said. I think it was last week when I said Michael Scott, sometimes he starts a sentence, he doesn't know where it's going to end. Like, that's what that was. For the folks at home, is Jake started the sentence and didn't know where it was going to go.
Yeah. I saw the hook, but I didn't. The punchline evaded me.
Yes. So
slowed downstream.
Yeah, like that garbage. I like the garbage. So they would have these movies. I saw clips of one that we were playing in front of. Oh, I forget what movie, but it was Drake Bell as like this Peter Parker. It was like I think it was called like Superhero Movie, and I think it was Leslie Nielsen's last film.
Okay.
Before he died, and it's just a spoof on all the different superhero movies that had come out at that point. So that is a spoof, but this is a satire. So that was really long-winded, but now we're back onto this is a satire. The production value for this, I think, is very interesting because obviously it's almost like the set design was something you'd see in the 30s.
Yeah, very much the set design. I can think of some of the wider shots in the castle. Like very much, even just like up to like how it was shot and like the angles reminded me of shots I saw in Dracula. You know, like
Yeah.
with winding staircases, and like that was something that really stuck out at me. And even the beginning of this movie, in the beginning of Dracula, when it's they've got the coffins, you know what I mean, like the
Yeah.
coffins, and there's like all the animals crawling around, and there's all the cobwebs. Like I was half expecting this to like open it up and it was Bela Lugosi in there, just because we had watched that. I watched that so recently. But like I definitely see.
And it wasn't. It was a skeleton that
Yeah,
would not let go of the. See, and that right there. I mean,
that
that's
was like
A1 right
chef's
there.
kiss
That is chef's
about,
kiss right
because
there.
like
That's good humor.
everything about the open, even like the opening credits and everything, was set up like this was supposed to be like a period horror movie from back in the 30s. Like it was so
Right.
set up like that. And until like this, when he starts taking the box away and the skeleton won't let it go, like that's the first joke. And that's the first thing that lets you know of like, oh, this is a comedy.
Yeah. And then I don't know. I know how clocks work. Okay, that's not the issue. I don't know how like grandfather clocks
Yeah.
necessarily. The reason I say this, there were 13. I counted them. I actually rewound and counted because I was like, there are a lot of these dings.
Yeah.
It's like I wonder if he added more dings.
There are 13.
And there are 13 dings. But what? I thought you could only go to 12.
Correct.
I
That is the
Oh,
joke.
so it's a joke.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was like, and see, so that's kind of how my brain worked this entire film. I was like, oh, I bet that's a joke. And sometimes it wasn't a joke. Um, but yeah, when you start out and you see, even though the clock is kind of going off, there's this shot kind of going around the casket that's sitting in a like firelit room, and he opens it and it's a dead, and I mean that's a dead corpse.
Yeah.
So how long has bro just been chilling in this room? You
Quite a
know?
while, apparently.
Yeah, and you just now you wanted to open up to
Yeah.
find the box inside. And then we cut to uh Gene Wilder being Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
One of the things, this movie, more than maybe any movie ever, has made me want to watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory again. Like I love Willy Wonka and the Chocolate.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Um, but the mannerisms. This came out. So Wonka came out in 71. This came out in 74. So it had been 3 years since. But the way in which he talks, especially because Wonka has this kind of intellectual quality about him, even though he's a little aloof.
Mm-hmm.
And this character obviously has that intellectual quality about him. So I was watching this opening scene, him talking about the brain and stuff like that, and seeing basically seeing Wonka,
Yeah.
which now like I want to go watch Willy Wonka. Am I gonna watch the Eagles play the Dolphins tonight on Sunday Night Football? Yes, but I'd rather watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Because we all know you love Sunday Night Football.
I do. I'm not making a prediction because last time it was so bad. It was so bad last time. But ironically, that's one of our number one most watched shorts because you tagged the Dallas Cowboys, which is awesome.
Got to do it for the meme.
That yeah, A1 meme right there. So we kind of open in on this and we get the joke that he's Frankenstein, not Frankenstein, which there's this payoff at the end where he goes, I'm actually Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And so at first you think, oh, it's like a joke that he's kind of going into and they keep leading into the joke, but it has a purpose to it.
Yeah.
Which I thought, I mean, a lot of these kind of do have a purpose to it. But I thought that was just such an interesting, I liked that he was kind of following in his grandfather's footsteps, but also I kind of like that the world knows about Frankenstein.
Yeah. Like
This world knows about Frankenstein.
It made it feel I don't want to say this. It not lived in it, made it feel, and it's like it didn't make it feel more real. I guess it's really just like the verisimilitude is there
Sure. Yeah,
because
very
that
good.
would make sense, you know, even just in legend or folktale or spooky story, whatever. Like it would seem like the world, or at least the medical community, would know, because that would be something that would be recorded in like a medical journal. I feel like even back then, it's like, yeah, this freak thing happened, but supposedly this science works, or you
And
know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. And it's also interesting because yeah, the verisimilitude is there because this is a satire off of a very famous story. We don't need all of the backstory. We don't need
Right.
all of the building blocks, actually. Believe it or not, it's more like a scaffolding.
Mhm.
It's not even a solid piece of a foundation because we already kind of know the Frankenstein story. So these little elements from okay, why is he going back to Transylvania? Necessarily, we kind of get a bit of an idea of that. Why does he bother just living there now? He obviously was teaching like
Yeah.
university students, and his last lecture, even though that bro that he asked to hop up had no calves. I mean, look at it. It's basically a skeleton. His legs were a
He had
skeleton.
no muscle to
He
begin
had
with.
absolutely no muscle. It was almost scary. It
Yeah.
was almost scary. And so he just decided, and but it's incredible because even in rethinking about that movie, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And that's saying something because you all know that I harp on story basically every
Yeah.
week. And it's so interesting that when we have a satire, kind of going back to the satire discussion we've been having, you don't necessarily need to have all the pieces there
Yeah.
because it is pulling so heavily from something that we already are familiar with that it's not as foreign and we can kind of follow along. And we don't need all of the different story elements. And honestly, I didn't feel like the movie, like I didn't feel like I needed it.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. I didn't feel like we needed to rehash Frankenstein. Like you just needed to be like aware of it, which, like you said, most people are, because it's such uh, a widely known um, IP. So yeah, it's just it's. I think it strikes the right balance there.
Right. The other thing I texted you, and I think what was it exactly? I texted you something to the effect of it's wild that studios back in the day used to just allow Brooks to just crap on other studios because this is a Fox film. This is
Yeah.
20th Century Fox film. Universal had the monster movies,
Hmm.
and this is a satire just roasting different elements and different choices that Universal made in the 30s. And it's wild that they because was it Paramount did Spaceballs?
I think.
Maybe Universal. I think it was like maybe Universal or Paramount did Spaceballs, and
Mhm.
obviously 20th Century Fox did Star
Yeah.
Wars. So it's wild that back in the day, the meme was just getting Mel Brooks to shit on other studios and other studio movies, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, and especially if you know, like back then, how really petty studio heads are. Like studio heads are petty, have always been
Today,
petty,
but
but
this is
it was
next
like a
level.
different level. And like I'm sure when studio heads of today are, you know, in the historical perspective, will come out about how petty they were to each other. But there was such like bitter competition between the different studios coming out of the studio system. And so I think is like Mel Brooks understood his pitch audience and was like, oh, if I wanted to sell it here, make jokes about, like, if I want to sell it at Universal, make jokes about Fox, or like
Right.
vice versa. Which I think is just, Mel Brooks is just like such a smart filmmaker, I think. And I
I
think
mean, he
it
really
gets
is.
lost because people see like his filmography as just like comedy, and comedies looked down on a lot of times, I feel like, especially like since he does a lot of satire. That's basically his whole shtick, is doing satire. But it's like really smart when you think about it, and I think he's a really smart filmmaker.
Yes. Yes. So the difference between this and the regular Frankenstein as well, from a story perspective, is isn't the whole dilemma with, them doing tap dance, right? Trying to.
What you mean? You don't remember the putting on the Ritz scene from the original Frankenstein? Or excuse me.
No, I don't believe that was in the theatrical cut.
It's in the extended release.
It's in the extended edition.
Director's cut.
Could you imagine an extended edition of Dracula? God.
Just more like
extended edition is just oh my God, here we go.
Literally, it's just more of that.
Week. Another week of Jake getting close to the camera. But yeah, this movie, I don't have a ton of issues with. And it's not because it's like the greatest cinematic masterpiece of all time. I guess I'm just aware of what it was trying to do, and I felt like it succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I will say I feel like we lose some narrative thread or like narrative focus in the back half of the movie. I think the front half of this movie is so strong. So like the humor is there, the narrative story is there. I think it is really, really, really sharp. And I think we get really after the monster escapes, it really just becomes like, it almost felt like to me, like, it was just like, oh, like we could do this joke or we could do that joke. We could do this, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't feel like it was all necessarily like strongly tied together. Like when Gene Hackman shows up as the blind man.
That was Gene Hackman?
Yeah. And he actually did this for free because he wanted to try out comedy. And
he's such a unit.
He's
literally such a unit.
His tennis partner was Gene Wilder, which
they were both in Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah. The two guys that are named Gene in Hollywood at the time. Apparently they play tennis together.
Well, this was also 1974 is when this was released, which was the same year as The French Connection, right?
Yeah, I thought that was, it might be 73.
Right. Okay. Well, you talk. I'm going to look.
Close. It's very, very close.
It's very close to French Connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think, because Chinatown was 75, and I confuse French Connection and Chinatown in my mind sometimes.
1971. Like I said, 1971.
Anyways, but reading up on this, Gene Hackman wanted to try comedy, and so Gene Wilder was like, well, I can get you onto this. I can't guarantee how much they'll pay. And he's like, I'll do it for free. And so he literally, like, he was on set for like 4 days, which took him 4 days to shoot.
It took him, that's weird.
And it would ended up in 4 minutes of screen time. But also reading up on this, Gene Wilder, Mel Brooks, a lot of people cite this as like one of their favorite movies they've ever done. Like, just the experience on set was just so good. They had so much fun.
I don't doubt it.
And like, I think that very much comes across how much fun these people were having. But they had so much fun that they shot extra.
Really?
They extended it to shoot more because they wanted to keep having fun. But then they ended up with like, they got to the finished film after the rough cut, and they were like, dang, this is so long and a lot of these jokes aren't working. And so like they cut like a third of the movie from that first cut.
Now I gotta see that.
I know. But it's like,
I need to see the special edition.
But apparently they went through and were literally like, every joke that's not working, it's out. We're getting rid of it. So I almost wonder if like maybe like there were narrative scenes that maybe stretched or sewed the second half of this movie tighter together, and because the joke didn't work, they cut it. I almost wonder if that was the case. Because
Elizabeth comes back.
She
like out of the, which also
for being the female lead, quote unquote, of this movie, she's like, yeah.
It also, she's the worst.
I know.
Like
Terri Garr is so much better. Like really, Gene Wilder, like Frederick Frankestein, like pulled off the move of a century with the way he was able to switch Terri Garr for Madeline Kahn. Nothing against Madeline Kahn.
Well,
but in this movie,
and you know what's really crazy?
What?
He didn't just leave her hanging. he found a guy for her too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was
The
part
riz
him.
on this dude is such that he was able to resonate, not resonate, or resonate to another human being.
Yeah,
Shrek?
something.
Yeah, the Hulk. The Hulk,
Whatever.
Shrek, and a human together is Frankenstein, essentially.
Basically. But yes,
I
the
love
risen
science.
the
That's
the Rizonator got so much riz. I
it's got
have
so
to
much.
I have to say my favorite line. My favorite line in this whole movie is when they arrive at the castle the first time. They get out. He's helping Terri Garr out of the wagon, and there's the big like knobs, and Igor's just like boom, boom, boom on the front door of the castle, and he just Gene Wilder just turns around. What knockers? And Terry Garr just, oh, thank you, doctor. I lose it every time. That is the funniest line of the movie.
Here's the thing. I found it funnier you saying it just now than the way it was delivered. And I don't know why. I think it's I think it's the fact that he wasn't looking at her breasts, even though they're right near her face.
Though.
Yeah, I know that's the joke, but if they had heard him say what knockers off screen and then cut to him and he's looking at the door and then she says, "Oh, thank you, doctor." I think that would have low-key made it funnier. Because I don't know, for some reason, like, it's a hilarious line. You know what would be really funny? Let's rewrite this movie. You know what would be really funny if he goes, "Wow, what big knockers I have." That's his house now.
Oh my.
And then, what big knockers I have. And then, doctor, what? Actually put me back. I don't want to go inside.
Yeah.
You're weird.
Another one of my favorite jokes though has to be when he first meets Igor and he's like, walk this way, and they walk down the steps and Igor has the shortest cane ever. And then like goes down the steps and then turns around and hands him the cane. He's like, walk this way.
Yeah.
Which rumor has it that is what inspired Steven Tyler to write Aerosmith's Walk This Way. I know it sounds as far-fetched.
Who the hell came up with that rumor?
Look it up. There are multiple sources that cite this as true. I didn't believe it at first either.
That he saw that, because Walk This Way it has nothing to do with.
I know, but like he watched this movie as they were like writing that album or whatever, and
I don't doubt you, but I'm like,
it's so random.
How high was this dude to think, you know what? The sentence "walk this way," that's a song, and that's a hit song too. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, MartyFeldman, who plays Igor, Eeyore, whatever you want to call him.
Eeyore.
That would have been really funny. Let's rewrite this movie. Hey, he's so good in this.
Oh,
he's so good in this.
Yeah.
He's the best part. He's so funny. Everything he says. Like when it goes, it's like dead 3 years, dead 2 years, dead 6 months, and then it's his face. But his eyes, he has, I think it's called Graves' disease, or there's something that he has that his eyes kind of bulge out. It's like a thyroid issue that his eyes kind of bulge out. And it just, he's able to like capitalize on that and just like the look of his character, but also just how, like, he's such a sly dog.
Yeah.
Like when Elizabeth comes back and he goes, "I'll take the one with the turban."
You take the blonde. I'll take the blonde. Take the one with the turban. And then he starts growling and bites her like mink coat.
Yeah, he rips the mink coat off with his face, and I'm like, this is. He had to have had a field day.
Yeah,
everybody would have wanted to have a scene with him in it. Hey, he's just so good. The look was there. The other jokes I really liked. I really liked the whole hump gag.
Yeah,
where his hump changed sides, but he wasn't the only character that had an ailment that changed sides. Did you notice?
I don't think I did. What? Tell me.
Was it the inspector, the guy with the arm
Oh,
thing?
did that switch sides?
That switched sides. There's a
Interesting.
scene where they're walking. I think it's when they're all mobbing together
Yeah.
and going to the Frankenstein castle. There's a scene where he is facing the other way. So he's facing forward and the camera's facing this way, and it's this arm. But in all the rest of the film, it's this arm.
Yeah.
And so he does it, and I
Interesting.
caught that, and that to me, like that's really funny. I thought that
Yeah.
was really funny.
Also, the fact that that guy wore a monocle over his eye patch.
Yeah,
That dude is just a clown.
that dude is a clown.
There is just this movie is really just the clowns unleashed.
Yeah, Clowns Unleashed. Now that's a movie.
Yes.
That's what we'll rename this for sure. You know, we've kind of joked a little bit about how funny this movie is. And Jake, you're telling me there's some great lines that were improv, but especially with a satire in particular, I feel like improv is really hard to pull off.
Yeah, because I feel one, it's no surprise that this is a lot of there are a lot of improv moments because that's just Mel Brooks. He's big on improv, and like Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder wrote this screenplay together. So like
Right.
no wonder they left room for improv, knowing that,
The screenplay was 3 pages.
it said jokes about Frankenstein.
The only thing was just like scene direction.
Yeah,
that was the only, that was the only thing.
There's literally just scene headings like exterior castle night, interior laboratory night. The end. Fade out.
The movie's working title was "Figure It Out." The movie.
But yeah, so much of this is improv. I mean, things like you brought up Marty Feldman's hump moving, jumping back and forth. That was improv because I guess like the part of his costume like wouldn't stay on, so like it just kind of kept shifting around. So that got improv. And then when Frau Blücher asks if she can get Dr. Frankenstein anything on the first night, warm milk, Ovaltine, which I've never drank Ovaltine. I don't really know what Ovaltine is.
I know. I've heard of
Ovaltine. So I'm
bunch,
like,
but I don't know what it is.
I definitely think that when it came out, I'm sure that was a funnier line than it is now. When after the monster storms out of the blind man's hut and he says, "But I was gonna make espresso." Barely, that was so funny. Like it fades to black quickly after that because everyone just cut up after that. They thought that was such a funny line because I mean, like I feel like improv lines on set are probably all that much funnier because you don't know they're coming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because as an audience, you don't know any of the lines are coming. But
exactly,
if you're on set, you know what the lines were supposed to be, or if they were supposed to have lines, and that's what makes it even funnier. Sure.
But like you're right. I think it can be very difficult to stay on focus, if you will, like as it relates to the story and like the story you're satiring. Like to stay on focus and not lose, just like not completely stray off. And like, don't get me wrong, this movie kind of gets a little fast and loose at some points, I think.
Quite literally.
Yes, quite literally.
Yes, yes. Elizabeth was taken with the schlong.
Yeah. No tongues.
Oh my
God. Another improv line.
What really?
Yes.
See, I must find the best lines of this movie are the improv ones, which I think actually is really interesting. That's
no one that did stand-up comedy. Like I don't think any of these people were stand-up comics.
That is true, but Gene Wilder also is so good. Like he's such a good actor, but he's also really, really funny.
Yeah. I think Gene Wilder, this may be a hot take. I think Gene Wilder is what made Robin Williams. Well, how do I want to say this? I think Gene Wilder was a generation ahead of Robin Williams.
A generation ahead. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, because there's like, I would say,
like Robin Williams was the next Gene Wilder.
Yeah, in a way,
okay.
but like took it to the next level. But because
yeah,
I feel like I'm thinking especially in Wonka, there are some incredibly like serious dramatic moments that I really appreciate Gene Wilder's like dramatic acting. But then there are moments like this when he's insanely funny. And so I think
it's almost his drama is it's good, but there's just this like he's also really funny too.
Yeah.
Like
it's like the drama makes him funny.
Yeah. So some of the things that he says to some of the parents in Willy Wonka are so audacious. Yeah. Dude's out of pocket. Like some of the things he says are so funny because he's absolutely correct, but he says it straight.
Yeah.
That I definitely can see, because Robin Williams as a dramatic actor was spectacular.
Oh yeah. He won his Oscar for a dramatic role.
As he should have. And this is completely beside the point to anything. But I heard that they're doing a new like Aladdin short with reused audio.
Really?
Robin Williams as the genie. Because for the folks that don't know, and I'm sure we're going to cover Aladdin one day, but I mean, he recorded hours and hours and hours of like improv dialogue that they still have.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're repurposing it and making a new Aladdin short of it. That's what I've heard. Now back to the movie from 1970.
Yes.
Now
improving
is the time,
our way back into
improving our way back to Rosebud and Thorn. As always, Jake, I'm passing it off to you first. What are your Rosebud and Thorn for Young Frankenstein?
So I have 3 roses written down, but in talking about this movie, I've added a 4th. So I wrote down Gene Wilder, Marty Feldman, and Terri Garr. I think that trio, that's when the movie's the funniest. I truly think like those 3 together, I think is when this movie is the best. Now, that's not to say everyone else did a terrible job. I think this movie, just top down performance wise, is very good. I just think for me on this rewatch, those 3 really shined. The rose I'm going to add is Mel Brooks, because it's not until I'm talking about this with you that I realize how like brilliant of a director Mel Brooks is. The way he was able to craft that. Like, he's so underrated though, because it feels like it's, when you do comedy and satires, people don't often realize like how hard that is to do. And
it's incredibly hard.
And to like make a career out of doing that is just incredible. And I think this is one of Mel Brooks' best.
Yeah. I mean, he just did History of the World Part 2.
Yeah.
What, this year?
Yeah.
Rose in his 90s.
He's over 90, isn't he?
Yeah. Dude's grinding.
Legend.
Get in the bag. Yes, sir.
What a guy.
We salute you.
Too bad we couldn't get him for this podcast. Scheduling conflicts.
I have a surprise. Ladies and gentlemen. Just kidding. You know what I would be like?
We have
Mr. Brooks.
We have 43 subscribers. We can't get Mel Brooks, and you know it.
Mr. Brooks, my absolute favorite performance of yours is when you play the German doctor in the Muppet movie from 1979. But he called the thing a yarmulke. Anyway, so
yeah. Anyways, he's gonna get my 4th rose, because I think there's so many ways this could have gone so off the rails, and just to have someone in charge keeping this thing together from inception to the final print, I have to give a rose to him.
For sure.
Buds, I brought up earlier, I think the second half of this movie feels a little too much like joke to joke, or like skit.
Yeah, it's a little disjointed.
And I felt like I lost the narrative through line that we very much had in the beginning of this movie. And so I think it's the payoff to the second half of the movie is a little it left me a little unsatisfied because I was like, if we could have just kept it there, kept that tight focus, I think this would have been even more an exceptional movie than it already is, and it's a very good movie. And then I do have a thorn, and it's a very like I understand why they did this, but it's all the like circle in, circle out transitions. I get it. It's supposed to be an homage to the original. That they use transitions so much more back in the 30s than we do now.
Oh, yeah, because it was harder to edit.
Yeah. But it was too much because it was every time it felt like, especially in that second half when we're just going skit to skit. I just felt like we did it it was like scene begins, circle out, and then scene ends, circle in, next scene, circle out. And it's just like, it got too repetitive for me. And there are movies that can riff off that concept and pay homage to that, but do it more successfully, like Star Wars. I
was going to say, I was wondering what your thoughts are then about Lucas and how he does
it. Doesn't give me the same. I didn't have the same off-putting reaction to the ones in Star Wars, because I think it's because they change them up, like they do different ones,
and it's not fade to black.
Yeah,
it's never fade to black.
Right.
The transition, like all the wipes are wipes from scene to scene.
Yeah,
like on top of each other. So it's completely different. Yeah, when it's from the scene and then it goes and there's so much more black, it gets darker, like darker and darker. It's way more noticeable. So
and in a black and white movie, you're all the more aware of that as well.
Right.
So
valid, absolutely. For me, I have three roses that you already mentioned. The only one I don't have a rose for is Terri Garr. She's funny. I felt she could be funnier, but I'm a big Gene Wilder guy. Every movie that I've seen him in, I really enjoy. I enjoy the way he acts, his performance. I think he's quite funny, and he definitely commands the screen in this one. MartyFeldman is an absolute unit in this. Like, he is so funny. He's so like, I can't get over that.
Abby something.
Yeah.
Abby
normal. You put an abnormal. Yeah. I can't do a good Gene Wilder. I haven't practiced. But yeah, he's so good in this. I think and the improv stuff, but just the way in which he kind of embodies this Eeyore character is spectacular. Mel Brooks, genius, absolute genius. And while moving into my buds, this movie I feel like could be funnier. And we already talked about it, right? It's a satire. It's not a spoof necessarily. It doesn't have to be jokes. I think maybe it was just the mood I was in when I watched it. I just kind of wanted more laughs. I kind of wanted it. It's smart, but Airplane is smart, and Airplane is funnier than this movie. Airplane is
okay.
You know what I mean? And so
I understand where you're coming from. I'm not going to necessarily say I agree, but I see what you're saying.
And so I think I just wanted this to be funnier because there were some great jokes, and I satire sometimes is hard to like. It is. It's hard to like. That doesn't mean it's not good. And good satire is sometimes easy to like. I think just when I watched it, the mood I was in, I think I just wanted a few more laughs, if that makes sense. And I really don't have a thorn necessarily, but I 100% agree with you on those transitions. They got to be a little extra for sure. But those are my rosebud and thorn. Now we move on to who we think we are. And Jake, I'm passing it off to you. There's only one right answer. No, I'm just kidding. I don't even know who I am.
I think there is a right answer here, and it is Dr. Frederick Frankenstein.
Because I'm one step closer to with my master's degree.
I
Welcome
mean,
to the how many times can Ben in a conversation mention that he has a master's degree and that he wrote a 100-page thesis on Star Wars, the podcast.
you know what? Sometime we should make a bingo card for our fans about like, or someone out there. If for those of you that watch
For our
this every
fan,
week, please.
Jake's mom.
Hi, Mom.
She's the best.
For the people out there that watch this every week, I would love to see a bingo card of like the things we say every podcast, because I feel like we could name like most of them, but I'm sure there's something that we don't even realize we're doing that people would pick up on.
Right, but we don't want to go back and watch like almost 40 hours of
what
content.
Is this? This is episode 40? 30 something? No,
30 something, but then we also had our first season. So we don't want to go back and watch like 40 hours of us ranting and talking.
I'd have to take a week off of work to do that.
I mean, I did ask my buddy at work, because I was cleaning a theater and I had one headphone in because it was kind of slow. And you had just dropped the pod. And so I was listening to it. It's like, how conceited is it for me to listen to my own podcast and think, wow, this is good. Or, wow, these guys are awesome.
Last week was a good episode.
Last week was a great episode. If you haven't seen it, make sure to go and tune in. We talked about The Invisible Man from 2020. Great film.
Yes.
But for me, I have to go with MartyFeldman and Igor, just because I know how much you like this movie, and he really encapsulates the humor that I know you'd appreciate.
Yeah.
So that's the reason. I don't think you have a hunchback, so it's not like you look like. And then, yeah. But
this is a new TikTok dance, maybe. I might be onto something. I don't know. TikTok famous, maybe. Anyways,
I don't even have a TikTok. So moving on to final thoughts, Jake, passing it off to you. What are your final thoughts on Young Frankenstein?
Final thoughts. This movie is smart. It is funny. It is chock full of good performances. I think if you have an appreciation for classic film, especially early horror, this movie is definitely one for you. I think if you just enjoy comedy, especially Mel Brooks comedy, I think you'll really enjoy this movie. I'm glad we got the chance to talk about it, because I realized, even more some things I liked it. Like I realized how much of a unit Mel Brooks really is through talking about this with Ben here. So I really enjoyed that. And
get really this podcast to Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
We call on you, the chosen 43.
Everyone tag Mel Brooks in everything. Download this on a flash drive and send it to him.
He'd probably be like, what the hell is this?
Why do I just want Mel Brooks to send me to like post a video and just like tag our page and just be like, what the hell do you guys want me to talk about?
Yeah. Like he goes, he gets a Twitter just to go, and he only has one tweet, and it's just this video. He goes, look at these two dumbasses. For me, I did like this film. It's important to understand that this is a satire, not a spoof, and not just a all-out comedy. So if you're going in for laughs, you're not necessarily always going to get them, but it is very smart. It's a good deconstruction of the genre, and I mean, they're great performances all around. And there are some spicy memes. There are some spicy memes for sure. But the real question is for you folks. As every week, we're just going to ask you, what are your thoughts? Did you like the movie? Had you seen the movie? Did you not like it? Let us know all of your thoughts, your rosebud and thorn, down in the comments down below. If you like this video, hit that like button and ring that bell with the subscribe button to get all notifications on upcoming content. We still got plenty more this year for you. And make sure to follow us on social media. Follow myself, Jake, and the Cinefile. You see the links right there on the screen. For Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. And cut.